Hello, my name is Casey Golden. I'm a trouble repairman in Salida, Colorado. The video you're about to watch is a very important safety video. The people represented are experienced, very good linemen that have agreed to share their stories of what happened when they didn't take the time for safety. The one thing that you'll find in every one of these stories is that it's a time issue. They had a momentary lapse in safety and PPE that cost them a good amount of time in recovery and stress with their family and their coworkers. So please take the time to pay close attention to the stories, because you'll see that they were very difficult to tell. And please take the time to be safe yourself and to take the time to make sure that all your other coworkers are being safe.
Did you know that in the last 5 years, Xcel Energy linemen have endured 35 electrical contacts and 17 flashes? All of those individuals required medical attention. Some of those people were critically injured and lost days, weeks, and months of time on the job while they tried to recover. Some suffered burns or lost fingers or toes. Others discovered hidden injuries long after an incident occurred. And still others had to face families who thought they may have died. In analyzing the incidents, one truth almost always stands out. If the injured people had taken just a little more time to protect themselves, they would have walked away uninjured. Time. Yes, it can take more time to protect yourself, but it could be just 2 minutes of safety precautions on the job that save literally months in the hospital. How and where would you rather spend your time? Scott Skinner and Lauren Klein were on a call to replace an arrestor and a jumper which had received extensive wildlife damage. They agreed to share their story because they want to help you avoid a similar life-threatening experience.
I'd taken my primary gloves off to go around the pole. It was just soaking wet. It was a 100-degree day. I was having trouble keeping my hands, getting a good grip on the pole so I could move around. I went around, got set to take the transformer legs out, and don't know whether I started to cut out and fall. My right hand grabbed the fuse tube that was hanging down out of the switch, and of course it was being backfed. And that's the last thing I remember.
As I head back between the two houses towards the truck, I hear this sound that all troublemen are familiar with and hate, the buzz sound, and right away I turn around and I holler at Scott, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And I look up there and he is slumped over and unresponsive, and at that point I'm thinking he's dead.
104, dump the feeder.
After Lauren performed a tricky pole-top rescue, Scott was taken to the hospital via ambulance.
Hang in there, buddy.
I remember hearing one of the paramedics say that they changed their route. They were going to a university hospital instead of Porter, because I guess the burn unit is so much better at university. And then I must have gone out again. I guess it wasn't very long after that they took me into surgery, and I think in total I had 6.
Scott was in the hospital for a month and then spent another month recovering at home.
I lost 3 toes on my right foot, the 3 smaller toes, middle finger on my right hand, clear back. They took the bone clear back into my hand. Missing half of this finger. I've got a burn, circular burn here, one here, and then a big burn across my bicep right there.
Both men agree that they now do things differently.
Being troublemen, we're by ourselves so much that we try to rely on ourselves to think of everything, and maybe sometimes a guy needs to remind each other that hey, that's hot, or that's being backfed.
I had a meltdown not long after this. I think the impact was thinking that Scott was dead and that I played a part in that scared me tremendously. There's a lot of things that I do different now. At the risk of making other guys feel uncomfortable, sometimes now we have to bring up the questions that might insult them.
Do we have an outage?
I don't know, I haven't really checked that yet.
But they can't see it as an insult. They got to see it as a safety impact on what they're going to do on that job. In this instance, it would have taken probably less than 2 minutes to be safe. It would have taken less than 10 seconds to just say something to Scott that day.
We got to make sure if we have an outage or not, and then we'll isolate that can.
Right.
And then we'll go up and see if we got to set any kind of protection for that 3-phase.
Okay. I wish I'd have left my rubber gloves on to go around the pole, or that I'd have gone down below the pre-spun and come back up. Had I left the rubber gloves on, we wouldn't be filming this right now.
Phil Church's accident occurred at a location where he had been working 2 days earlier to isolate a switch cabinet. At the end of the first day, he discharged all 3 cables. 2 days later, he returned to the project and didn't realize there was still a charge in other parts of the cabinet.
I actually took a leather glove and reached inside of the cabinet and wiped some of the grime off the insulators in there, and at that point I thought, well, maybe this isn't as bad as it looked. At that point I reached in there and touched one of the bolts that were holding up the snuffers on the bus arrangement in there. I think if we just change these bolts out, and at that point I bled off the charge that was on the 500 MCM cable that was in the switch cabinet. The guys around me said they heard a snap, and I felt a jolt. What I had was the back of my upper arm against the case, and I felt, the muscles tighten up at that point. I knew I had gotten popped pretty good, but I had no idea at that time that I had had an exit wound, and it was a small little 1/4 of an inch wound up in my tricep area, my right arm, that was against the case. I had an elevated enzyme, and for the next, I think it was 4 weeks at least, I had to go in weekly and get a blood test to see if that enzyme had gone back down to a normal level.
Mere seconds could have saved Phil from this injury.
Well, it all gets back to the basic 2 things. Number one, I had my rubber gloves with me, and they were laying on the cabinet right above my head. It wasn't grounded properly. Even though most of the things we did were correct, and we did a number of things the right way, it just takes one thing to overlook, and that gets you in a tough situation.
Ed Lenson needed to replace a transformer during an outage. A nearby business indicated that they needed their power back up quickly. Already short-handed that day, Ed tackled the job with the aim of making the customer happy.
And it was almost, we were ready to descend the pole when the suggestion was to change the damaged fuse.
Yeah, fuse looks bad, but yeah, we could change it.
Reaching up for it. My left hand, fingertip, thumb grabbed the end of the cutout to take it out of the holder, and the contact occurred there. My leg was against the spun secondary neutral.
Thing's being